welcome back to NOTIERS Frontiers Diaries. Today we are going to continue our journey from Baja California into what we call mainland Mexico, or Major Mexico, the real Mexico.
And just breaking news update. New fancy pants, Notier you can call me. So I got my clean new getup. It'll be fun to look back at this video a year from now and see the insane difference of
shiny new.
Of shininess. But yes, but as of now I'm very comfortable, very happy with my purchase.
Yeah.
Maybe at some point in time I'll do some kind of review, but the out of the box 2-day review is, I really like it.
Pretty good. Yeah,
it's just, you know, it's always nice to get shiny new things.
So in order to get from Baja California to Mexico, we had to take a ferry. And the ferry leaves from La Paz at the bottom of Baja California, and it goes to two places, either Los Mochis or Mazatlan. And we decided to go to Los Mochis because that was further north and that was closer to a destination that we were really excited to see, called Copper Canyon.
And when we were deciding on what ferry to take, us being the budget travelers that we are, there's a commercial ferry and then there's like more of a passenger-esque type ferry.
And by commercial you mean like a freight ferry.
Like big trucks and cargo trucks and stuff.
Exactly.
But like our little motorcycle can squeeze on anything, and it was much cheaper because the expectations of what you get for your money is much lower as well.
Right. Most people take the regular ferry that, you know, ships passengers and their vehicles across the Gulf, but we decided to go on the freight one with all of the truck drivers just because it was so much cheaper, and we thought it would be a really cool experience,
and
kind of like a local experience.
It turned out to be really nice because all the truckers just slept in their cabs and listened to their music and already had their little fridges and everything. You know, I mean, their home is inside that truck.
Yeah, it's an overnight ferry, so it takes quite a while to get to the other side.
Yeah.
But you don't get like a room or anything because all those truckers, they sleep in their trucks.
And we had to be at the dock at like 9 or 10 o'clock p.m. I forget.
Yeah,
maybe it was a little earlier, but it was
late at night.
It was real dark. But, you know, we pulled up, they weighed our motorcycle for the first time of the trip, and I immediately burnt the receipt of how much it weighed so I wouldn't have to tell anybody. It'll still remain a mystery. But, you know, we waited our turn, and I pulled up behind this large semi. I've never been on a ferry this big before.
Yeah.
You know, I've done some things in the States where you put your cars on small ferries.
But certainly not with our motorcycle either.
Not with our motorcycle. And there was an elevator, a lift inside the thing.
Yeah.
That I pulled up behind the truck. You know, we both get lifted up to the second deck. Mm-hmm. And then I don't have a revert. He pulled forward and they wanted me to go backwards, but
and the other thing about like
waddled.
A motorcycle is that, you know, these other guys, they're just pulling in and parking. But then the motorcycle, you can't just park. You have to actually strap it down, obviously.
Yeah.
So that was
And, you know,
different.
they're used to big chains and big heavy straps that they, you know, tie down different parts. And a motorcycle, there's some physics and Newton laws behind, you know, not compressing the shocks too much so it still has a little bit of a spring to, you know, you actually want it, you don't want it directly on its side stand. You want it centered so that its kind of center of gravity is balanced out. But these guys, all they do is they throw a strap over and they just crank that thing as hard as they possibly can, and it still has, you know, some chivvy movements.
Then we were allowed to stay in the common area, which is just a small room.
It's a pretty large room.
Slept there.
Yeah. I mean, the bathrooms were not worth writing home about. That was left. There was more to be desired there. But what got me it was late, and so we set up our little sleeping pads on the bottom on the floor.
Yeah.
But like the
It would move so much.
we
It was
have our
really
little
nauseating.
water bottles that would just
There was no place to put it where they wouldn't just like roll around. So.
But it was nice because it was only us in there.
Yeah.
And the TV only worked when we were directly on port because it was, whatever TV waves or whatever, how science works. But when we got a little bit further out, it was just, us rocking back and forth. We were in this little room by ourselves, a little romantic, truck stop, like bus station, weird seating area. There was enough space for us to put our pads down on the floor, and
that was nice.
Just
it was
the
just
swing.
the rocking.
Yeah.
That
And
was the only problem.
I'd wake up and run out just to look at the deck, just to make sure that somehow my bike hadn't magically lifted 6 feet over the railing and dumped into the ocean.
But my favorite part of that trip was eating with the local truck drivers, because they had a little like canteen, and everyone would come up and get their tortillas and beans.
Everybody was trying to share their beer with me. It was very social, but no.
Yeah, they were super nice and very curious about us and what we were doing on this ferry. And so it was a really cool experience in that regard.
Yeah.
And finally, we arrived in Los Mochis. And from there, we took a very quick ride over to El Fuerte. Which is kind of the stopping off point for a train that goes to Copper Canyon.
El Tran.
No, the train has a name.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
called El Chepe.
El Chepe. But a train is a tran.
Tren.
So
Yes.
my Spanish is still improving.
Sad to have to leave the bike, but we knew we had to leave it in El Fuerte in a very secure location.
Yeah.
And so we found this hotel, and people have taken the train and left things before, and we were like, can we leave our motorcycle here for a few days as we take this train to Krill? And the guy was like, yeah, sure, bring it into our front living room.
The problem
basically.
is that he was up like, not a flight of steps, but he was up
a few steps. Yeah.
Well, like 5 steps. Mm-hmm. And then he had these double doors, and then it was pretty much like a living room and a dining room,
Yes.
And so we shuffled all these tables around and all these, cabinets and stuff.
Yeah.
And I've always been uncomfortable riding up stairs,
For
and
sure.
and not only for me and my bike, but like to squeeze in those doors was fairly narrow, and
Yes.
I had to commit before I got there. I wasn't going to get up there, then stop. You know, I mean, we took some basic rudimentary measurements.
Right.
But
Well, this is our first time actually bringing the motorcycle into a building for secure parking, and it would not be our
Upstairs.
last time.
And,
Upstairs,
yeah.
yes, that is true.
And so at the base of it, you know, I mean, everybody was looking at me, everybody had the thumbs up. I put on a fake smile and pretended to be confident, you know, but inside I was like, oh, this is gonna go horribly wrong. But I gassed it, I lumbered my way up, and I got through the door, I smiled from ear to ear like I've done it 100 times.
Yeah,
And
professional.
oh yeah, and then we kind of just jimmied it into this guy's dining room, and yeah, and that it stayed there safely as we took our little train ride up and back. So it worked out very well.
It turns out that the train kind of ends in this place called Creel, and there is a road that does go to Creel from the other side of Mexico, and we didn't realize that, but we did meet some people there that were on motorcycles. So it is possible to get to that destination without taking the train.
But it was semi-enjoyable.
It
We
was.
didn't have our own cabin or anything weird. It wasn't, you know, the Oriental Express, but you know, big, huge picture windows, and it was like the Grand Canyon if it was covered in foliage. You know,
Yes.
it was.
In fact, Copper Canyon is supposedly bigger than the Grand Canyon.
There's all these stats that if you use one stat, it's true for.
Yeah, it's
you
really
know,
difficult to determine
Yeah.
what you consider to be a big canyon. But it is a large canyon. It was beautiful. The bottom part of it is very tropical, covered in foliage, and then the higher you get, the higher in altitude it gets, and the more rocky and kind of barren it gets as well, with these stunning views.
Yeah.
Just beautiful.
And we had been to the Grand Canyon, and you know, kind of the barrenness of it is magical in its own right. And you can
So
see
incredible.
all the crags and different channels and every stone face, you know, and it's beautiful, bald, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to pass that on to the world, that bald is still beautiful. I'm getting there. But it's all, you know, in Copper Canyon with all of the foliage, it's hard to, you know, it's more
envision it in the same
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
And
And
it
no
was-
matter what, it's beautiful.
It was very beautiful. And at the end train car, the caboose, that the door opened out to, you know, just the tracks going chicka, 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 chicka.
That was
And
really cool.
we spent the majority of the day there just watching the train tracks flippity flappity by, and you know, the train tracks just weave behind us.
Yeah, I do really love train travel. Obviously, I prefer motorcycle travel.
Yeah.
But train travel is, I guess, my second favorite if I had a way to go.
Definitely.
It was very beautiful, and there were lots of tunnels and bridges as well.
Sketchy bridges that, you know, you can look down and you can see train wreckage from
Yeah.
whoever knows how long ago, but it would just cost too much money to like bring it back up. So it's just modern art, you know.
Now, one of my favorite things about that journey is once you get to Creel, you're in an area of Mexico that's famous for its indigenous populations. And they are famous for running, actually. And they make very awesome clothing. It's beautiful, the textiles, and they really do, you very much feel their presence there in Creel. And a lot of the places that we would go to, they're selling their crafts, which are amazing. And that was our first encounter with an indigenous Latin American population.
And I mean, this is the first time where we didn't have our own transportation, and so we were dependent on the small little tourist buses. And
Yeah, that's the part that I didn't like, you know.
Yeah.
I appreciate being a tourist, but I much prefer being on the motorcycle and having that freedom to go where I want to go as opposed to like joining a tour group. No doy dinero a niños.
Yeah.
But we did join a tour group, and it took us to some really amazing natural wonders such as the waterfall out there.
nice. And again, it was just a lovely, walk through a beautiful park next to. It reminded me of like Starved Rock here in Illinois.
It did, definitely.
It was really beautiful, and there's an insane amount of steps to get down to the bottom.
Yes.
All along the way, there's people selling little trinkets and necklaces. So we snagged a couple to send back home.
After the waterfall, we went to the Valley of the Frogs and the Valley of the Mushrooms.
Same valley, just to be clear. The Valley of the Frogs and the Mushrooms.
It is the same valley.
Yeah.
They're these really interestingly shaped rocks that just take these forms of...
From wind erosion
Yeah,
and stuff.
people envision frogs, they envision mushrooms.
Some of them look like they could be mushrooms. None of them look like they were frogs. They all look like they were some kind of melted wax toy figurine that was left in the sun for too long.
But they were really cool.
They were cool, yeah. I mean, and we like our little oddities. But
And that really rounded out our time in Creole and the end of our Chepe journey.
yeah. And we took the train back, which
Yes.
was, just a new perspective,
When we got back to El Fuerte, our bike was still there
It was
in
still-
the living room.
Yep, no one.
And
squeezed it
we
out.
headed off to a city on the western coast of Mexico called Mazatlan.
Despertar así por las mañanas, tus ojitos rondando en mi cama y sin querer me vuelvo a enamorar. Me has dejado en el corazón una semilla llenita de amor que voy a cuidarla hasta que muera el sol. Y así, por siempre y enamorarnos. Yo quiero, ay, oh, yo quiero, así, acurrucaditos. Yo quiero.
When we arrived, it was night. And this is one of our rules that we have. Not to ride at night. We've been told that many times by other adventure motorcyclists. It's just not the best idea.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, this was now the second time that we found ourselves riding at night after having to go to that ferry in La Paz at night. And we were not happy about it, and we needed to find a hotel.
And so we like staying on the outskirts of towns just because it's less hustle and bustle. It's a lot of times it's cheaper. A lot of the times it's away from like the downtown nightclubs and bar scene and all
Exactly.
that.
So we were scouting out different places to stay, and we found one, and we were like, "Oh, that's a great rate
I
that they
saw
had
one.
up on the board."
Yeah.
So we just pulled right in and couldn't really find anyone.
There was a little speaker button. We hit it. We said we want to stay the night. And so they buzzed us in and they opened the gate. And I said, "Cool, this is going to be secure."
It
They
looked
said,
really nice.
"Yeah, you're
like,
going to be in
fancy technology.
room 111." And so we pulled up to room 111. It was above this garage door.
Yeah, it had a garage.
And as soon as we got in, the garage door lifted.
We're like, "Oh, it's our own
was like,
private garage connected to the room. This is perfect."
magical.
Yeah.
I pulled in, Marissa jumped off and opened the door that went from the garage into the room. There's air conditioning that was already on. There's a bed that was really nice.
There was like a
It
towel
smelled pleasant.
swan that they'd made.
Yeah.
I was like, this is fancy stuff. Like, how could this possibly be for that rate that we saw out there?
So I took off my jacket and like twirled around and laid on the bed and was like, "This is amazing. I love Mazatlan."
Private bathroom and everything.
Yep.
And we thought, well, it's strange. We haven't talked to anyone.
And then there's this, we heard a little tap, tap, tap on this little metal Lazy Susan door on the wall.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Hello," and then they started speaking in Spanish, and I didn't know why this. I went back into the garage and poked my head around and was like, "Hey, buddy," and he started speaking to me in Spanish, and I asked him how much the rate was. My Spanish isn't good, so I called on the assistance of Marissa.
Yeah, and he said, well, it's by hour. So, first of all, he did not seem happy that we were like talking to him face to face.
Yeah.
He wanted to talk through this little door portal thing, and he was like, "Yeah, it's by hour." And I said, "Well, how much is it to stay the night?" And he said, "Well, it depends on what time you're going to leave in the morning." And I said, "Well, I don't know, between 6 and like, why is this such an issue? Why does it have to be by hour?" And he's like, "Well, if you've arrived here, it's around 6:30 now. If you leave at 6:30 in the morning," and he did the math for 12 hours, and it came out to be a ridiculous amount of
It was
money.
insane.
And I'm like, what is going on here?
I was like, "The rate up there says it's it's whatever, you know. The rate up there says it was like $10, $12 US is the conversion.
Like, why do I have to pay by hour? And finally, it dawned on us that this is a sex motel.
We pulled into a sex motel, and then across the street, another little garage door opened, and like this like 19-year-old girl walked out, and then
in a mini skirt and got on the back of a
motorcycle, and they rode off, and I was like, So, as nice as it was, and half of our gear was already taken off, and
we just couldn't afford that
I wasn't
rate.
gonna pay, you know, $60 to stay at a sex motel.
Exactly.
You know?
So these are really popular throughout Latin America, and this was our first experience with one. But actually, for motorcycle riders, a lot of people love these sex motels because you do get that private garage right next to the room.
But we've heard that they're cheap, and they're not.
Well, this one wasn't. I mean, I presume you can find different rates, right?
Yeah.
And it depends on what you're looking for to pay. We just happen to be very, very cheap. But one of the problems with the sex motel is that you can't really leave once you're in.
You can't enter and
it's
exit
not like
at
a normal
your
hotel.
leisure. You don't get a garage door opener.
There's
you
no
buzz
like
the guy.
restaurant, right?
Yeah, and you say, I need to leave my little sex dungeon, let me out. And then you go out into the world, and then you enter back in and you say, I need to return to my sex dungeon.
Yeah, so they're quite popular in Latin America. I think because a lot of the times multiple generations are living together, and so even if you're a married couple, you don't really have your own privacy. So yeah, these are very popular. But we decided to move on that night, and we went into downtown Mazatlan. A person who we had met on the El Chepe train.
Chris.
Yes,
the
he was there.
gunslinger.
Yes, he's a DJ.
Yes.
An American DJ. And he was like, come stay at our hotel.
Yeah, him and his pops had found something right along the coast. They were refurbishing the beach side of the hotel. And then the back of the hotel was kind of like, you know.
Yeah, still the old quarters.
And so we're talking to the guy checking us in. And, you know, he said, oh, we have a very beautiful room. I said, I'm going to stop you right there. I don't want a beautiful room. I want...
With a lovely ocean view. We're like, nope, we don't want that.
Said,
we want the ones in the back.
Yeah, I have a room that's not been refurbished, and it's got a fan. It doesn't have a TV. And I said, done. That's what we want.
Yes.
We paid like $7 or $8 or something silly.
Yeah.
And we bring our stuff up there. It's all the way in the back, all the way on like the 4th floor, and we walk in. And like the bed frame was like melting.
It had character, I suppose you could say.
The fan didn't work. The fan was missing one of its blades, so even if electricity went to it, you know, it wouldn't have done anything.
It was definitely grody.
But I didn't care. I was
matter.
tired. I asked for what I got, and so it was almost too late at that point. But we spent most of our time out of that room, and we hung out with Chris. We had some good, you know.
Yeah, we went out on the town. I will always remember this city as being a real partyville.
Yes.
Like, there are these little carts that go around in the streets called
golf
pulmonias.
carts.
Yeah, they're golf carts, and they call them pneumonia, basically, because they say, not that anyone could ever get pneumonia there, it's so hot, but they say if you take them for long enough, you know, the wind, and you'll get pneumonia. That's the legend anyway. ¿Cuántas personas pueden estar en este vehículo?
Caben 4 personas.
Oh, but they're called pneumonias, and
I mean, they have like disco balls in them and fancy lights, and
people are hanging off of them.
half
they're
naked.
All
They're all
playing
drunk.
Music, and everyone's just partying.
And for such a tiny golf cart, they got speakers that, you know, could work at a nightclub. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Talk about it, talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. I'm filming you, filming me.
We actually went up to a hilltop view of Mazatlan, which was beautiful.
In one of the little suicide
Those little
death cab
pulmonas.
for cutie things.
Dura 1 minuto en subir. ¿Quieres conocerlo? No te voy a cobrar nada.
Wants to know if we
Me
want
das
to
una
go there.
propina.
It's 1 minute away. Pero va a costar más.
Está precioso. Un minuto duro subir.
¿Va a costar más o solamente?
Solamente una propina me dan más.
He wants a tip for it.
But can you see in the night? In the weather?
¿Podemos ver algo en la noche?
Sí. Lo voy a subir. Un minuto duro.
But no, it was real nice. And then, like the next day, we went out for lunch at this nice little fancy restaurant owned by some Canadian dude.
Yeah,
And we were
beautiful
sitting there,
place.
and the owner walked up because he overheard us all talking about our travels and what our travel plans were, and rah rah. And he said, "Oh man, that sounds awesome. Like, how long do you plan on staying here?" And we said, "Well, we're in this really creepy, hot, miserable room, so we're probably going to take off tomorrow."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, I'd love to hear more of your stories, and so if you want to stay another day, you can stay here. I have a couple of rooms that you could stay in." And
It was so nice.
of course, we took him up on his offer. And we walked into this room. It was the Romeo and Juliet honeymoon suite.
Yeah, the Romeo and Juliet suite.
It was
Wow.
insanely beautiful.
So nice. Yeah, we were so grateful.
You know, we spent an amazing day there. We talked with the owner. It was just absolutely fantastic. And our honeymoons, oh my goodness, it was just the most beautiful
Sweet.
place that we
Yeah.
stayed in since the States, including the States, you know. And we didn't get absolutely wasted and ruin it, you know.
Right. we had
So,
learned our lesson
that was always a
from
plus.
Baja. Right. So in our next episode, we're going to be traveling further into Mexico.
We kind of want to go over, you know, like the long way up has just come out, and we watched it because we're super excited, and
with
that
Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman. It's
and
really great.
covers a lot of the same territory that we've done through South America and into Mexico. But we kind of want to do not a recap of the film itself, but we do want to clarify that in their section when they went through Mexico, they're famous celebrities, and so
Yes.
their stature is a little bit more high risk than ours.
Yes.
But we just kind of want to go over some of the basic pros and not pros and cons,
Is
but
Mexico
safety.
too dangerous to ride through? That's what we want to talk
Yeah.
about in our next episode.
And spoiler alert, no, it's not.
It's not.
It's absolutely amazing. But we'll kind of cover some of those and as we make our way south and
Yes.
continue to absorb Viva la Mexico.
I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give us a big thumbs up and hit the subscribe button below. And I hope to be seeing you next time.
Peace, everybody.
Bye.
Stay safe.